Hi, welcome to Business Influencers. Hope everyone's having a great week. We are so excited again to let everybody know that the show continues to grow, and we want to thank you listeners each and every week joining us here at Business Influencers and TALRadio, part of the Touch of Life Foundation. Again, if you have any questions and you would like to see new types of content related to business and business influence, do not hesitate to reach out to us at Chris@ChristopherSalem.com. We'd be more than happy to listen because the show is about you, and our objective is to help provide contextual content that helps move you and your business influence to the next level, and more importantly, scaling your business as a result of it. Again, we're so excited to see the show continue to grow, again, because of you, the listeners. And again, your input will help us to help you better moving forward. Our show is being brought to you today by Biz Explosion Conferences. They put on the Achieve Biz Explosion Conference, which is taking place June 9th through the 10th in Denver, Colorado. And again, they put on events throughout the area, particularly around the Denver, Colorado area. And I can personally tell you, this is a conference that you do not want to miss. I've personally been to one before, and they do a magnificent job of bringing quality people together, not only to build quality relationships, but also to do business. And I am personally going to be excited to be there as the keynote speaker for their June event. And we highly encourage you to check them out at Biz Explosion Conferences, and that's at Achieve Biz, B-I-Z, conferences.com. That's Achieve, B-I-Z, conferences.com. Again, the show is going to be June 9th through the 10th. So feel free to check them out, and you will definitely get some quality information and know how about attending that if you can make it to the Denver, Colorado area. Well, we got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about opportunities in the current economic chaos. We are here with Karl Maier, and he is the author of Surfing Economic Chaos. He has over 25 years experience starting, managing, and advising lower middle market companies. Karl offers profit improvement workshops and CEO peer advisory roundtable groups. And without further ado, we welcome Karl Maier to the show. Karl, how you doing today?
Real good, Chris. Great to be here.
Well, we are so excited to have you, and I know you're going to be sharing some great information from your book, Surfing Economic Chaos. Can we talk a little bit about, before we get into the opportunities, which is always the best part, let's talk about what is some of the things happening in our economic scene, so to speak, with causing this chaos, because I guess it's always good to look at the challenges and the problem before we can address the solutions and opportunities.
That makes sense. That definitely makes sense to me. There's a couple of big trends in the world that are really, they're multi-decade long trends. They're shaping the economy that we're in right now and are bringing the opportunities. And those two trends are the aging demographics, not just in the United States, but all across the developing and developed world. That's really big. It's something humans have never really experienced before, the way that's happening. So that's a big deal. The other is, we see it all over the news. The policies in the United States regarding trade and military have fundamentally changed. We had one set of policies that worked great during the Cold War. That ended several decades ago. And we're gradually saying we don't want to spend our money to defend the rest of the world. We're not going to keep our market open to people who aren't going to play by our rules. And we want our manufacturing back. So those are the two big trends that are really driving so many of these things that we're seeing in the economy.
Yeah. And what are you seeing especially I know you specialize in lower to middle market companies. How do you feel like it's impacting them specifically?
So there's 4 points that are impacting the economy that are going to be very relevant, not just to big companies, not just to individuals, but to those lower middle market companies. The first is the labor shortages that we're seeing. The baby boomers are at this point on average past 65 years old. They're slowing down. They're moving into various forms of retirement. So that's shrinking the labor force. At the same time, we've got a very small group of Zoomers who are, at least to some degree, joining the labor force. And so taking a very big generation out on one end and bringing in a very small generation on the other end is shrinking the labor pool as a percent of our population. So when you shrink supply, price goes up. And we've definitely seen that, anybody who's been trying to hire has seen it's hard to find people and they're more expensive. So that's one big thing. Another is inflation. If you've got inflation, you're going to think of the CPI, right? Consumer Price Index. What do consumers buy? 2/3 of what consumers buy are services. And services are driven directly by labor. So if we've got a labor shortage and the price of labor is going up, that's going to drive inflation. There's a few other things that are going to drive inflation as well. But once you've got inflation, then the Fed's going to say, well, hey, we're going to try and stop inflation. We're going to raise interest rates. So now you've got high cost of capital. Your borrowing, cost of borrowing, other capital is going up. Again, there's multiple reasons for this, but that's probably the biggest one. And then the fourth thing is we saw it happen with COVID, where the supply chain started to collapse, and we're bringing more and more manufacturing back to the United States. So that shift is driving a lot of changes, in sourcing material, in use of labor and capital, a number of different impacts that impact a wide range of companies, even ones that aren't directly dependent on a full international supply chain.
Got it. So what do you feel like, based upon, everything you shared, like what are some of the opportunities? Because I always say there's always opportunities disguised in challenges, setbacks, problems. We don't grow or expand without them. So where do you feel like, if you could share some input, where are those opportunities, and how can we look at some of these challenges as opportunities to grow?
Well, obviously for every company, they're going to be a little bit different, but maybe a few examples. One of the things that I saw was in the wire coat hangers. The beginning of the pandemic, almost all of the wire coat hangers that dry cleaners and various people would use came from China. Well, that all shut down, and there was this huge shortage of wire coat hangers. Well, several companies reacted. Now there's 3 significant manufacturers of wire coat hangers in the United States. They've got fairly automated production facilities. And so that was an early opportunity to adapt. It's tough to get this material. Hey, we can do it in the United States. And the United States, for a few different reasons, is actually a lot more competitive than it used to be. One of them is very inexpensive energy prices relative to the rest of the world. So anything that's going to be energy intensive, manufacturing, steel, these types of things, plastics, anything in plastics is likely to be at a competitive advantage in the United States. And a lot of that's been done overseas. So finding ways to either manufacture or use plastic in your products or sell plastic products, those are opportunities. But you can also look at things like being more effective with the use of your labor. So part of that is how you manage and motivate your team. So people who are highly effective at managing, motivating, and hiring people are going to have a big competitive advantage right now. There's some others out there as well. Hopefully that's a little flavor.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, you definitely shared some great insight. What would you say that, for those listening, Karl, we have people from all different types of businesses, whether if they're running these businesses or working in these businesses. With this challenge going on, what would be some some tips or things that you could share that they could start to see the process of something that can help them to navigate this and move forward?
One of the things that I've been doing and working with companies is taking a look at their customers and their products and how they match up. It doesn't even have to be a real complex combination. I had a company, they really had 6 different products, and, I don't know exactly how many customers, but it wasn't this huge matrix. But in digging into that, we looked at where the big sales were, what the profits were, and we kind of put all the costs, not just the direct costs, but the overhead cost against the various products. And we were really surprised at where the profits came from. And this presented an opportunity to change the pricing. So that type of analysis can be a really good way to look at several parts of your operation. You can look at your, obviously your sales and marketing. You can look at it from a financial point of view. You can look at it from an operational point of view. So I like it because it pulls a lot of different elements together. And depending on what you find, you can go a lot of different directions.
Wow, that's great. No, I love that. And, in the book that you put out, and I know you got a lot of great stuff in there. What are some of the things, like any types of things? I always say that, besides companies seeing opportunities that can come out individually, is there any kind of new trends or anything that maybe you didn't shed insight? Yeah, because I didn't specifically address that could, happen as a result of this chaos, so to speak.
Well, one of the things we've seen over the last 20 years is interest rates have been real low and the stock market keeps going up and up and up, is investors have moved towards riskier and riskier investments. That's what we've seen up until the pandemic. And so venture capital and startups have been cool things to do. And that makes a lot of sense when you've got inexpensive capital. Why not go out and, do those types of things and get some higher returns? But as we're seeing interest rates rise, as we're seeing less capital in the system, what we're seeing is more and more it's getting pulled back to more conservative uses of capital. So companies that are looking at existing markets with relatively established business models, maybe there's a little differentiation. That is probably more the cool place to be now, all things being equal, in what we're looking at. So I think that's a trend. So if you've been going, I know I might need to go raise venture capital, you might consider whether there's some alternatives.
Yeah.
To getting
so it might not be a great time for startups if they're looking to raise capital, unless they have a track record of producing something, that's showing that they're moving forward. They have either their own investment in, or they've shown a record that they're already generating revenue at a certain level that somebody might say, hey, I'd still be willing to invest, based upon what I'm seeing.
Right. So startups, there will be successful startups. Some of them will get capital, but I think the bar has been raised for what it takes to get capital.
Yeah. Would you say that in that case, like, even though conservative is the way to go, do you feel like that point of entry, like to maybe some of those companies that were more riskier, that obviously that will come down, but that might be a good buying point at some point, maybe not right away, but it's still at some point, because that may come back and upswing again if things get reversed and inflation starts to come down, and interest rates, if they do come down or not, hopefully if they do, that might, reverse it back up again.
Interesting question. So one of the things that's really cool about demographics is, if you say, Karl, how many 20-year-olds are we going to have 10 years from now? Well, I can tell you, because we can look at how many 10-year-olds there are right now. So we know how many 20-year-olds they're going to be in a decade from now. So that we can easily look out 10 and 20 years into the labor force. And what that tells us is for the next decade, we're going to have labor shortages. So if you've got labor shortages, you're probably going to have inflation. So don't look for inflation to trail off anytime in the near future.
Well, because of the labor. Yeah, you're right. That's an interesting point. I'm glad you brought that up. And it's so true. I remember, obviously the labor shortage was even obviously, started, during COVID. I remember, even a dental assistant or hygienist for a dentist would, you could fill that position in a day. In some cases, it was taking 3 to 4 months to fill that position.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a whole new world. I mean, we haven't seen this in many decades in the United States. So new environment.
Yeah. I mean, and based upon what you had talked about, some of the opportunities, even while there's going to be some labor shortages and inflation is going to make it difficult to obviously, invest and so on. Are there some opportunities other than what you've shared that could, maybe that might not be right away, but that could be looked into, and then at some point, if things reverse, how long? Who knows? That could be, worthwhile for, by looking at what's happening now and kind of like, capitalizing on something on the downturn to, hopefully reap the reward on the upswing when that happens.
I think your point is, if we follow the trend and we see, there's a temporary move away from the trend, that may be a great time to jump in. So if you say, interest rates are probably going to move higher, so when there's a dip in interest rates, maybe that's time to borrow money, maybe to, buy a house.
Yeah.
It may not be that the interest rates come all the way back down to where you want them to, but at least they're going to, if you see, well, there's been a dip, maybe that's a time to jump back in and take advantage of that opportunity. I think there's going to be a number of those because nothing moves in a straight line. There's always some zigs and zags.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, what are some other things you can share? Like when we look at opportunities in this current economic chaos, even as business owners, like what do you feel like, either whether it's small, lower to middle market companies, like what would you recommend that they do right now? What should be their strategy? Do they kind of be conservative at this point? Like we talked about, a lot of things are on the conservative side, or is this an opportunity to maybe not gamble on certain things, but maybe still be aggressive in new ideas and planting seeds for things that when things do pick up, that they could be ready to kind of grow as a result of it?
That's a good question. I'm not sure that, conservative or, risky is necessarily the way I'd think of it.
Yep.
But there's so many things that are basic assumptions that have changed. Interest rates have been low, now they're higher. Inflation wasn't here, now it's with for a while. So with all that, taking a look at your market, taking a look at your business internally, you can find opportunities. I was talking to somebody about cranes the other day.
Yeah.
And one of the things that there's a particular crane, it's pretty good size crane that unloads container ships in the U.S. ports, takes those big containers and sets them on the dock or vice versa. Right now, all of those have been manufactured in China. All of the ports all over the U.S. The things that we've been seeing that have been requiring U.S. content, the challenges that we've been seeing in China, the kind of trade war that we've got going on, opportunities like that where it's like it's been made overseas for a long time, that might be something to look at and say, is there a way I can start supplying that, take advantage of that made in America bias that we're seeing more and more. So I think that's a great opportunity to me, it's still pretty safe, but it's also a way to find an opportunity and grow.
Oh, great. Thank you for sharing that. And, I mean, this is a time, I know you do a lot of profit improvement workshops for companies, and you do this through a CEO peer advisory. If you're looking at, companies you're working with in these profit improvement workshops, and you're advising CEOs, what other advice would you give them, in and around these challenging times economically? And, what are, other things that they could be doing, whether, internally with their teams, their staff, other than just investing in certain things?
Yeah, several different things. how you manage your teams is becoming more and more important. So think about how you're structuring your management. There's a lot of opportunity in that space. Another opportunity is using your capital wisely. I mean, if you're borrowing money and interest rates are going up, make sure you're using that money in an opportunity that's going to give you a high enough return to make it
Yeah.
worthwhile. So, not saying don't borrow or do borrow. I don't know your situation, but think about that carefully with these new assumptions.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, like I said, you don't want to borrow just to borrow, because we don't know, especially if you get locked into something that, now you're paying on the higher end that could, maybe things change in another year or two. Who knows? And, but yeah, again, nobody has a crystal ball to predict where things are. We know eventually something will correct itself. We know that. It's just a matter of when that happens. Where do you see, like, are there any particular industries that you may see that, that are going to weather this chaos and then, be able to capitalize on these opportunities more than others?
The United States right now is going to definitely have some areas that are really strong. Agriculture, agricultural processing are probably going to be really strong areas. The U.S. produces, because of our great geography and the technology we've got to extract hydrocarbons at a very, very low price point, means that things like plastics are at a really, really good price point. So that's an opportunity. I mean, plastics are used in so many things. I mean, medical to food service to just about any types of manufacturing. So there's so many opportunities there. I think those are a couple places that I'd really think about very carefully. And demographically, we've got this baby boom generation that's getting older.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I mean, it's at this point there might be phasing out. I'm a Gen X, and I think we're now heading into that phase of not yet riding out to the sunset, but we're getting there. But some of us can be, within 10 to 15 years from that. I would say maybe it could be, well, it might even be less than 10 years now. Depends on when you're going to retire. But I think a lot of people are not retiring at 65. They may be retiring at 67, 68, maybe 70. So yeah, definitely maybe a little less than 10 years up to maybe, probably even be, probably 15 years or so, that people, will eventually retire. And then the millennials will make up most of the workforce, I guess. And most of the management decisions will begin to come from there.
It's a good time to be a Gen Xer finally, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We kind of, we're in the shadow of the boomers and the traditionalists for all that time. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I think, but boomers are still out there. Anything in the medical space or retirement space is probably not a bad place to be as well.
Exactly. No, it's exciting to hear. As a Gen Z or Gen X, I'm here. I'm not retiring because I like what I do. So hopefully I got a place still that I'm going to be in, that I can fill a requirement in the next 15 years or less.
Sure.
Any other things that you could share, when we talk about opportunities, in the current economic chaos, any other things that you've come up with, anything from the book that you feel that the audience should know about and that you could share for those listening? We're going to make sure that people, will know later how they can get their hands on your book and how to find out more about you here shortly.
Of course, sure, everybody be rushing out to buy the book, and that'd be a good decision. But for the moment, one of the things that I think is really important is that so many key assumptions have changed that it's a really good time to go out and get different perspectives. When you're used to the way things have been and they're look like they're just going to continue same as they ever were. You've worked out what your business model is, what your customers are doing, what your competition's doing. You're in pretty good shape. But when everything's shaking like we're seeing right now, and it's moving, there's so many things moving that we've just never seen before, that the value of getting other perspectives is much higher. So, wherever you choose to do that, that could be, you've got friends or other business owners or managers, that or wherever you're going to get that perspective, that's really extra valuable right now.
Got it. Wow. No, great. I love hearing that. And I really think what you shared here, this is so important, especially, as we head in now, we're going to, here we are in, Q2 of 2023. And, and there's, everyone, there's, we always hear what's going on in the news and all this, but I always say that if you really know where, if you understand what is, not what you think it should be, we're in a better place to adapt and grow and from these challenges. No, I love what you're saying there. Any other comments before? I would love to let people know where to find you, what you're up to. Any final thoughts with this topic that you would like to leave with this audience and those that will be listening later here at Business Influencers?
One last thought, I think, is, when you're talking about the economy and economists, it can be pretty negative. I do want to say that everything I see, America is going to do very well. We're going to have inflation. We're going to have labor shortages. We're going to have our challenges, no doubt. But fundamentally, we're about 25% of the global economy. We're energy independent, food independent. We've got a strong, consumer market. We've got a very, very strong defense, Navy, all that. So we are in a very solid position. As many of the things on the news are designed to stir us up, I really can't see how the U.S. is going to collapse or have any fundamental deep problem at this point. So I see a very positive outlook for the U.S. economy.
Wow, that's fabulous. That's a good way to get, I guess, not only for the U.S. people, but good even for our show. We always like to leave on a good note. So, well, Karl, I know we're towards the end of the show, and I want to make sure that people get to know who you are. Also, how can they get their hands on the book, Surfing Economic Chaos, and anything else that you would like to leave with the audience here?
The book comes out on April 27 of 2023. And on that date, don't know exactly when this will air, but you can get a Kindle version for 99 cents. And you can find it on Amazon's the easiest place. So search for Surfing Economic Chaos. And you can always find me on LinkedIn, and you can track me down that way.
First of all, I want to thank you, Karl, for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us here to share this valuable insight.
I appreciate the opportunity. It's always a joy to talk to you, Chris.
Thank you, Karl. And listeners, we want to thank you each and every week. We highly encourage you to check out Karl Maier at Abundant. Again, check him out. Not only get your hands on this book, reach out to Karl as well on LinkedIn. You can go to his website, and he does some great things in terms of roundtables with CEOs. He also has a profit improvement workshop for those, whether if you are a chief revenue officer or someone that's responsible for driving profit and revenue in your business. This is someone you should be getting in contact with. And Karl is very accessible. I know that personally. So Karl, thank you again for being here with us. And listeners, we want to thank you each and every week joining us here at Business Influencers. And again, we are committed to bringing guests like Karl in to share their words of wisdom and insight and their personal experience to take your business and level of influence to the next level. Till then, everybody, have a great rest of your week. And again, any questions, reach out to us at chris@christophersalem.com. Have a great day, and we'll see you next week.